After an absolutely putrid effort versus the Ottawa Senators last night, the Montreal Canadiens are going to look to rebound by getting a couple of points versus the Winnipeg Jets, who are reeling just as bad as Montreal is right now. Let's talk some puck. Hey gang, Kosta here for PuckTalk Montreal on this December 3rd edition of the show as we preview the game between the Winnipeg Jets and the Montreal Canadiens after the Canadiens absolutely played what I would consider to be their worst game of the season versus Ottawa last night. For Winnipeg's part, they're coming off a horrible 5-1 loss at the hands of the Buffalo Sabres. Yes, you heard me right. I said the Buffalo Sabres on December 1st. So both these teams licking their wounds, looking to get 2 points tomorrow night. What does that mean? Well, first, let's take a look at the game day lineups. As we look at the lineups for the Winnipeg Jets, who are on the left, you've got Connor, Scheifele, and Velarde on the first line, Namestnikov, Taves, and Perfetti on the second. Nino Niederreiter, I say the whole name because it is Corey Collard's favorite name in hockey. Adam Lowry and Iafallo on the third line, and Tanner Pearson, Barron, and Nyquist on the third. On defense, you've got Morrissey and DeMello, Samberg and Shen, Stanley and Miller, and in goal, we'll talk about that in a second, Comrie and Milic. For the Montreal Canadiens, the lineup will probably look pretty much as it did in last night's game. Caulfield, Suzuki, and Bolduc on the first, Slavkovsky, Kapanen, and Demidov on the second, Texier, Evans, and Anderson on the third, Jacky Veleno, and Gallagher on the fourth. On defense, Matheson Dobson, Hudson Carrier, Jacky Struble, and in goal, it will be confirmed already by Marty St. Louis, Jakub Dobeš between the pipes for Montreal. Injuries now, and here's a big one for the Winnipeg Jets. Connor Hellebuyck is out for Winnipeg, and that is why they're playing Eric Comrie as their starter right now. They've got Kepke, Salmonson, and Pionk out, Fleury and Hellebuyck on IR, while the Canadiens dinged up just as bad. Davidson, Engstrom out, their healthy scratches. Doc, Newhook, Laine, Gooley, and Larocque are on IR. So the big thing here is the fact that Connor Hellebuyck is going to be out from the Winnipeg Jets. That's a huge loss for them because they depend on him to help their defense out. That's not to say that Winnipeg is a bad hockey club, because they've got a lot of fire up front, especially with the legs of Scheifele, Taves. Lowry is always a pest when you take a look at his game. Nino Niederreiter always plays well versus the Habs, as does Kyle Connor. But what do the Canadiens have to do to win? Well, one of the things that they absolutely need to do is skate. They didn't do that last night. But we'll talk a little bit more about my game planning. But first, let's take a look at the keys to victory for the Canadiens versus the Winnipeg Jets. Now, what do the Canadiens have to do to win this hockey game? Well, number one, they need to test Comrie out early. Comrie is not Connor Hellebuyck. So with Winnipeg missing their star goaltender, the Habs need to shoot a lot more than they have in recent games. From everywhere? Maybe not. But they have to generate shots from between the dots that are a lot more dangerous than what they gave us last night versus Ottawa. Versus Ottawa at 5-on-5, the Canadiens were just simply outplayed. They didn't generate enough offense. They were too busy trying to defend in their own zone. They need to be better. The Canadiens need to generate offense through the neutral zone. They need to attack in transition because the defense for the Jets, while mobile and good, are just as small, if not a little bit smaller than that of the Canadiens, minus maybe Lane Hudson. So you can take advantage of that defense if you attack with speed. They're not the fleetest of foot. Morrissey's quick, but other than that, the defense really isn't as mobile as they'd like to be. Second thing they need to do, just like Ottawa did versus Montreal last night, the Canadiens need to start crashing the net looking for rebounds. And whether it's guys like Gallagher or Veleno or Anderson, get shots on goal and dig in. Get your lunch pail out, as we say in hockey terms. The game's not coming to you as freely as it did earlier in the season. Teams are starting to figure out what you're doing. When they do that, you got to change it up. To change it up, the Canadiens need to shoot more often than they have, and they need to get dirty in front of the net. I'm not talking about playing a poor style of hockey. What I'm talking about is getting in there, digging your stick, trying to get loose pucks, trying to get rebounds, and scoring on second chance opportunities. It's one thing the Canadiens rarely do. Against a team like Winnipeg, whose goaltender is prone to give up rebounds like Comrie or Milic, you need to get in there. So it's an important part of the game if the Canadiens wish to get their 2 points. They also have to push the pace, as I mentioned, in transition. They need to play with speed. They need to play with pace. Jonathan Toews, Mark Scheifele, they can skate, but they're not as quick as they used to be. So the Canadiens need to make sure that they attack the middle of the ice with speed to take advantage of the fact that the center ice position for Winnipeg Jets is not the fleetest of foot. Whether it's Toews, Scheifele, Lowry, they're not fast. They're good skaters, but not fast. The Canadiens have better speed up the middle. So they need to take advantage of that. They also need to take advantage of the fact that the Winnipeg Jets have most of their speed on the outside, and their wingers aren't quite as big as most of the other teams that the Canadiens face in the Western Conference. Attack with speed. I'm not saying go play along the half wall and try to generate stuff from outside the dots. No. But push the pace in transition. With Hellebuyck not there, right, the Jets tend to struggle defensively, especially when they get into a track meet style of game. They can't do it. They need to be a type of team that traps. And so quick outlets, stretch passes, and a strong presence in the neutral zone would go a long way for the Canadiens to beat the Jets. A very important point. Probably the most important in this hockey game is the fact that they need to lock down Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor, notoriously versus the Montreal Canadiens, has a propensity to score at least a pair of goals in every game he plays against us. This one may not be any different because he always finds a way to find space on the right-hand side. The Canadiens have to be ready for it. So get out there, get in his face, use your sticks, get a tight gap on him, and don't give him time and space to shoot. Because when you do, he tends to put the puck in the back of the net. Of course, the Canadiens are going to need to get a better goaltending performance out of Jakub Dobeš than the Jets get out of Eric Comrie or Milic. That goes without saying. After the absolutely putrid performance of Sam Montembeault last night, it's got to be better for Dobeš. And now Dobeš's last performance versus Colorado, can't say much about that because Colorado is the best team in the National Hockey League, but hopefully he can rebound from that and have a better game versus the Winnipeg Jets. And finally, the Canadiens have to continue scoring on the power play. If they're going to struggle at 5-on-5, then the power play needs to be the best part of their game. It was versus the Senators, but it needs to be just as good, if not better, versus the Jets. The Jets do tend to take a lot of penalties. The Canadiens, 4th in the league at taking penalties, or 5th, somewhere around there. The Jets, well, they like to take penalties too. So that special teams battle, it's going to be really important. Especially given the fact that the Jets have the backup goalies in. They're going to try to collapse down low, clear the front of the net. And oftentimes, if you push a little harder than they like, especially versus a guy like Schenn, he's going to take a penalty or two more than the Jets would like. So those are your keys to victory. Make sure you test the backup early and often, crash the net and look for rebounds, push the pace in transition, shut down Kyle Connor specifically at the forward position for the Jets, get better goaltending out of Dobeš and Comrie, and win that special teams battle. I love to say that. It's a super important part of the game. Just like the power play, the penalty kill has to be just as good, killing penalties for the Canadiens versus the Jets. Now, let's take a look at a lot of the stuff that's going on. When you take a look at the Winnipeg Jets, they're having trouble scoring goals as well. Whether it's their inability to score on the power play, 5-on-5, whatever the case is. When you cannot score more than one goal versus the Buffalo Sabres, you need to take a look internally. And they have. After the game versus Buffalo, there was a players-only meeting to try to settle things down because I don't think the players blame the coach for their performance on Monday. And normally when a team has a players-only meeting, they come out guns blazing. The Canadiens are going to need to shut down that early burst by the Winnipeg Jets. They're going to come out with energy. They're going to push the pace early. But are they going to be able to maintain that pace, or is there going to be a 10-minute flurry and then they're going to take the pedal off the metal and allow the Canadiens to dictate the pace. We'll see. But the Canadiens, just like the Jets, they need to come out strong. They can't afford to sit back on their heels and just let the Jets come at them. If the Jets attack, you counterattack. Because they're going to come in so strong, I guarantee you they're going to leave gaps in their coverage in the neutral zone, and you're going to be able to jump the zone quickly and get plays done in transition more quickly than you did versus Ottawa or any team recently. There's a thing to be said about teams that are desperate to score and desperate for a win. And the Jets, they're getting desperate. Especially after losing to one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League, you know that they're going to want to have a better output this time around versus the Canadiens. And the Canadiens, losers of 2 straight, they're not going to want to make it 3 in a row. So the Canadiens are going to come out and they're going to have to push hard. So it's going to be an interesting hockey game. Goaltending-wise, I believe in Jakub Dobeš. I think he could do well. Do I think he's going to get a shutout? No. But I think he's going to be able to shut the door. If the Canadiens can play proper defense, if they're not chasing players behind the net, if they're sticking to their position, and they're playing a solid man-to-man defense, they're going to be able to take care of business versus the Jets. If they start chasing the puck in behind the net and have 2 defensemen go below the goal line, leaving the front of the net undefended, they're going to get into the same trouble they did last night versus the Ottawa Senators. It's as simple as that. You can't afford to have 0 defensemen in front of your own net and expect your forwards to do the same job defending the net front as a defenseman would. That's out of the question. So if you turn around and you tell your forwards, I want you to play man-to-man while the defense plays a zone down low, that's okay. But if you're getting a 5-man 5-on-5, a man-to-man, then what you have to do is you have to make sure that your defensemen understand that you cannot go to support your defenseman when the puck's below the goal line and you need to be in front of the net covering a man, right? Let one of the forwards cover somebody else below the goal line. Don't leave. Stay in front of the net, cover a man in front of the net. Let the forward go. That's the right way to play man-to-man at 5-on-5. But the mistakes that were being made last night, the Canadiens were chasing behind the net. If there's one player and a second player, I'm going to go get that second guy, but you're leaving the net front open. And you're leaving your goaltender out to pasture. Now, granted, Sam Montembeault did not do himself any favors last night in the way he played. It could have been 6-2, if not for Mike Matheson coming in and pulling a puck off the goal line. I mean, there's just no confidence there, and Montembeault's going to need to find it and become more consistent. He needs more performances like we saw versus the Golden Knights. Until we do, I said this in the postgame last night, I'm going to say it again now, it may very well, you may be doing him a favor by sending him down to the American Hockey League for a conditioning stint. Call it what you want. I mean, there's no reason not to think that maybe his groin is an issue and continues to linger. Nobody's talked about it, but he did hurt his groin in the playoffs last year, and he had to leave and allowing Dobeš to get in there. But by the same token, that groin may still be bothering him. So why not make it a conditioning stint? Sit him out a game. Bring up Kakinen from the Laval Rocket to replace him for a game. Do something. But don't sit there and expect Eric Raymond to be the answer, because he's not. There were too many holes in Montembeault's game, and we're starting to see those same holes in Dobeš's game. Don't want that to continue. Because if both goaltenders are struggling the same way, the Canadiens are going to be in huge trouble. At the end of it all, Wednesday's game is going to be very important for the Montreal Canadiens, because as we look at the rest of the week, as I go back to the schedule, the Canadiens not only play back-to-back last night and today, but they also play back-to-back Saturday versus the Leafs in Toronto, and then back home versus the St. Louis Blues on Sunday. So what's there to say? The Canadiens need these points. You can't lose points in a back-to-back. You need to get something. You can't come away with nothing. So the Canadiens need to push the pace. They need to push the envelope, and they need to make sure they get the Winnipeg Jets on their heels and take advantage of that and score some goals. Get more shots on goal. Pepper Eric Comrie. Do something. But don't sit back and expect the perfect shot like they did last night versus Ottawa, because they did not come. Thanks for watching the show. I encourage you to please make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and of course, hit the notification bell for the latest and greatest as we move along here on PuckTalk Montreal. And of course, we'll see you tonight after the post game when the Winnipeg Jets and the Montreal Canadiens face off. Bye for now.